Vikings Training Camp 2019. My name's Charlie. We got Zeke. We're back at it again this year, Zeke. It's 2019. Vikings had a disappointing season last year. They look to try to improve on that this year, try to get back to the playoffs.
Yeah, the good thing is most of the pieces from last year are still in place. Mike Zimmer still the head coach, Kirk Cousins still the quarterback. You've got Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs at wide receiver. Main questions is depth in the offensive line, which was kind of the same storyline heading into last year, seeing as how Adam Thielen had his Pro Bowl year, his first Pro Bowl year at this time last year, and you just brought in Kirk Cousins, so now it's depth and offensive line again, the question marks for this Vikings team.
Right, and the Vikings have tried to, try to do some things different this year. They drafted a center in the first round, the first time that they've ever drafted a center in the first round, Garrett Bradbury. And Garrett Bradbury, a guy that the Vikings are going to lean on day one, game one, day one. They're going to put Bradbury at center, and they're going to move Pat ELFLEIN to left guard.
Yeah, they're essentially throwing Bradbury into the fire, the starting center for the Vikings. They moved Pat ELFLEIN to left guard. We had a chance to talk to offensive coordinator Kevin Stefanski and fellow offensive lineman Brian O'Neill, the impact that the new offensive linemen have on this team.
Josh is doing a nice job. I think Coach Zim called him the other day a battler, and I think that's a great term. He's been on successful teams. I appreciate having him out here. We've talked a lot over the course of having him in the building and just certain things that he's seen over his time, but he fits real well into that meeting room with Coach Dennison and Coach Janoko. Those guys are battlers, and Josh kind of sets the tone for those guys.
Oh, he's great. I mean, playing next to him was awesome. I mean, at first he didn't talk at all. Just in the locker room, he's kind of a quiet guy, but when we're out here, he's talking. There's no lack of communication, and you can tell he's played a lot of football, and he's played a lot of good football, and there's a reason they brought him here, and he's a hell of a player. I love playing next to a guy like that just because there's no thinking. Because if there's any gray area for me, he makes me right. So I appreciate him and all he does, and just keep trying to build that chemistry.
I think Pat ELFLEIN is a team player, and I could not be more proud of that kid. He is all ball, and when we brought Garrett in here and Pat moved over to left guard and didn't miss a beat, and that speaks to the selfless person he is. It speaks to the type of people that Rick and Zim bring in here, and I think he's brings a great element to our offensive line room, both personality-wise, but then again, another athletic guy that is really strong, has a wrestling background. He can get in those barroom brawls, but his skill set fits exactly what we're trying to do. But more than that, I think he's certainly the type of guy that we want breaking the huddle and wearing purple and gold.
It's not too much different. It's still football. It's still playing offensive line. It's still a very physical position, and you got to be in the right spots, and you got to be nasty. So you got all those same principles apply at center or guard. But there's just a few different things that guard, stance, and the little footwork's a little bit different, and just more space.
Yeah, offense is going to be so important for this team, as it is every year, but the real scheme has changed this year for Mike Zimmer. He wants to be more of a physical team. He wants to run the football with Dalvin Cook and also a rookie in Alexander Madison.
Yeah, Madison kind of getting back to the scheme that the Vikings had 2 years ago with Jerick McKinnon. Last year we had a bruiser as the backup in Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray now with the New Orleans Saints. But you're bringing a guy like Madison. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's tiny, he's quick, he's evasive, and he's going to get a lot of yards after the catch.
Yeah, he's really impressed me this training camp. He just seems like he's so explosive when running the football, and he can cut just like how Dalvin Cook can. Just an explosive weapon that the Vikings can use. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the weapons. One of them being a guy that they drafted in the second round this year, Irv Smith Jr. He's a tight end for this Vikings team. Also had a chance to talk with Adam Thielen, our conversation with Adam Thielen, and also some expert opinions coming up in just a little bit right here on TV3.
TV3's 2019 Minnesota Vikings Training Camp Special is brought to you by Harvest Homes, Stenerson Lumber, Sanford Health Detroit Lakes, Team Industries of Audubon, Foltz Buildings, Sype Drug, Farmers State Bank of Underwood, Dalton, and Rothsay, and Leighton Broadcasting.
is the Fultz building. This is the Fultz building. This is the Fultz building.
This is a Fultz building.
And this is the Fultz building. And this is the Fultz building. And whether it's 0 degrees like I'm out here in the snow today, or it's 70 above and sunny, these guys are out and they're going to construct your building. Call Fultz Building today.
The first ever Detroit Lakes Craft Beer Tour, presented by Seven Sisters Spirits, is happening Friday, August 16th, out at the Mountain. Unlimited 2-ounce samples from your favorite Midwest breweries. Over 100 different craft beers and hard ciders to try. Big thanks to Disgruntled Brewing and CI Sport for the event t-shirt. R&G Subaru for sponsoring our detailed program. Bartle's Auction Service of Purim for the VIP sponsorship. And Strelo Insulation for hooking up the sampling mug. CraftBeerTours.com. Your next favorite beer is here.
Let's practice, Tyler.
It was good, really good. Nice to finally put the pads on and hit a little bit.
What's the biggest part of your game you're trying to improve on for this season?
A little bit of everything. I mean, with this year being year 2 and kind of having a better understanding of the offense and kind of how things work, just kind of the little details, route running, run game, just all the little stuff that you tend to forget about when you're thinking a lot.
When Zim says he wants to run the ball more, be physical, does that excite you as a tight end?
Yeah, I think that excites all the tight ends. I mean, we love catching the ball and we love blocking. I think we have a pretty versatile group, and all of us can really do both, run game and pass game. So I think we're all excited about it.
What have you seen from the rookie Irv Smith so far?
He's a really good tight end. He can block, like I just said. I mean, we're all really versatile. I mean, he can block and he can run routes, and I'm excited for him. I'm excited for all of us.
Welcome back. TV3's coverage of 2019 training camp here from the Twin Cities Orthopedic Center in Eagan. Charlie along with Zeke. And Zeke, we have Irv Smith Jr., a new addition to this Vikings team. The Vikings went out, they drafted Irv Smith Jr. in the 2nd round this year, and they're looking for him to also make an impact.
Yeah, historically, when Kirk Cousins has a 2 tight end set, his numbers are a lot better. Last year, working predominantly with Kyle Rudolph, had a great year. And then you're looking at David Morgan, who's more of a blocking tight end. Irv Smith can flat out catch the ball. He's fast, he's big, he's going to get yards after the catch. He's going to score a lot of touchdowns in his career with the Vikings.
Yeah, that's what we hope for, is a lot of touchdowns. His dad also played in the NFL, with the San Francisco 49ers,
that's right,
too.
Yeah.
So
some NFL experience there. Also, you're looking at a guy like Chad Beebe, whose dad also played in the NFL. Don Beebe for the Buffalo Bills for many years. So the 2nd generation of NFL players with this Vikings team.
I actually work with my dad. My dad played 9 years in the league. He knows a lot and knows what he's talking about. And so I train with him, whether it's speed training, quickness, strength, and then just obviously the game, knowledge of the game. It's just day-to-day, coming in, doing the things I need to do on the field, off the field, whether it's studying the playbook longer, getting extra reps after practice, and just staying focused and locked in, with my job and what I got to do and what they're asking of me.
It's so much fun to be down here, Vikings Training Camp 2019. Not only do you get the access to the players, but also access to members of the media. We had a chance to talk with Andrew Kramer. We'll play our interview with Andrew Kramer with the Star Tribune a little bit later. But also, you had a chance to talk with Mike Wobschall, who really is the guy that maybe has his finger on the pulse of this team more than anybody else.
Yeah, he's been covering the Vikings for a lot of years. He wrote for Vikings.com for a long time. He's got the Minnesota Vikings podcast, which you can hear on Vikings.com now. He's all over the place. I had a chance to talk to Wobby about this 2019 team, the disappointments from last season, and moving forward to this season. We're down here at Vikings training camp in Eagan, talking with Mike Wobschall of the Vikings Entertainment Network. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Excited for another season of Vikings football?
For sure. Optimism reigns supreme this time of year, every year at training camp, which is one of the fun parts about it. Our 2nd year here at TCO Performance Center, so that's good. We're ironing all the kinks out, and I think everyone's ready to go.
Looking back at last year, Vikings finished 8-7-1, kind of a disappointing end of the season with that loss to Chicago. How have the Vikings improved from last year to this season?
Well, I think, when you look at the backbone of the team, it's Mike Zimmer in the defense, and adding Shamar Stephen, I think, is an underrated big move for this team in the offseason. He's not maybe a household name nationally, but he's a big deal for the Vikings because they drafted him, they developed him, and he was really a key cog in the run defense. Then he left last offseason to go to Seattle as a free agent, and our run defense took a little bit of a dip. And I think Shamar being back, and when he's healthy and in there with Linval, I think it's really going to help the Vikings run defense, which is going to make him even better in like second and third down situations. So I think that was an underrated part of the offseason. And then Anthony Barr returning when it looked like he was going to be gone was really a big move for the Vikings. So those two things I think are really going to help the Vikings defense stay on top. Offensively, obviously they made some changes to the offensive line, and I think some improvements, particularly with the selection of Garrett Bradbury in the first round as a center that allows you to move Pat ELFLEIN to guard. So now you've improved 2 spots there. Gary Kubiak comes in to help Kevin Stefanski on offense. So I think what you saw this offseason was Mike Zimmer and the Vikings really getting back to the nuts and bolts, their defense, and improving the run game, and I think that's how they're going to try to win games this season.
Yeah, question has to be depth, with especially the defensive backs, with Holton Hill missing the first 8 weeks, Anderson Dejo gone. How have the defensive backs been looking so far in training camp?
Yeah, it's hard. I think we've only had a few practices really, so it's tough to really say you've seen a lot. Good or bad, that is significant. I think they're still feeling that out. Now, the cornerback depth is something to watch for the rest of camp, and especially in the preseason games, because when everyone is there and accounted for, the depth and the talent is really good, because you have guys like Mike Hughes, a first-round pick, and Holton Hill, who's got a lot of talent, as reserves. But those 2 guys that I mentioned are not going to be available when the season begins, because Holton Hill is going to be suspended, and we think Mike Hughes will still be working his way back, even though he's getting closer. So now all of a sudden you've got some spots open on the 53-man roster, and maybe even a spot on the 46-man game day roster, where a rookie, an undrafted free agent, someone like that's going to have a chance to step in. I think a guy to watch is a 7th-round draft pick that we have named Chris Boyd out of the University of Texas. I think Duke Thomas is someone to watch. And then we drafted a safety from Wyoming named Marcus Epps, who can train as a nickel and maybe even outside, or a hybrid type of player. So I think he's a guy to watch too.
Look at the offensive side. We know it's Thielen, we know it's Diggs. Who gets that number 3 spot this year?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. I think it kind of depends. Are you talking about, do you need a guy on the outside? Maybe that's Jordan Taylor, a free agent who's familiar with this offensive scheme from working with Gary Kubiak in Denver. If you need an inside guy, I think it's probably going to be Chad Beebe. But someone else could jump up and surprise us as well. I think the underrated part of that discussion, Zeke, is we're going to be in a lot of 2 tight end sets, a lot of what they call 12 personnel or 22 personnel, where you have 2 backs and 2 tight ends, or 1 back and 2 tight ends. I think that's going to reduce, at least on first and second down, the number of times we're in 3 wide receiver sets. So it doesn't make Chad Beebe or Jordan Taylor or Laquan Treadwell less important, but I think there's going to be an emphasis on multiple tight end sets and getting teams to have their base defense on the field and then throw to Irv Smith or Kyle Rudolph out of that. Or if teams respond by leaving their sub packages on the field and our 2 tight end sets, then we can be physical and mash in the running game. So I think that's going to be something to watch. But Chad Beebe should be someone who stands out a little bit here at camp. I think Jordan Taylor will stand out here at camp. And the other thing about Beebe is he's got an opportunity on special teams to maybe win a return job with Marcus Sherrills leaving us to go to New Orleans. We have that punt return spot open, and I think he's a guy to watch there.
Which Vikings rookie do you think has the largest impact for the team this season?
It's hard not to say Garrett Bradbury. I know that's low-hanging fruit. It's very easy to say that. But being the starting center, he's going to obviously touch the ball in every single play. The Vikings want to get better in pass pro, and they want to be better in the run game. Garrett Bradbury is obviously going to have a hand in that. Alexander Madison and Irv Smith, young skill position players on offense. Maybe those are a couple of guys to watch, but I think the answer to that question is the obvious one. I think it's Garrett Bradbury, and if the Vikings are right on Bradbury, they're immediately a better offense.
Looking at the schedule, a tough schedule for the Vikings this year, playing the AFC West. Where do you have the Vikings finishing this season?
Well, I think we're going to win the division, don't you?
Right?
Yeah, well, I hope so. I think, the NFC North is really a tough division, and I don't expect the Bears to be worse or to take a big step back. Like the Vikings, the Bears have a really good defense. So it's not like they did something last year on offense that got them to be 12-4 and win the division. Their offense was pretty good and probably going to get better, and their defense is still there. So they're a really good team, and the road to the division championship goes through Chicago. Of course, you have 12 in Green Bay, right? You have Aaron Rodgers, so they're tough. I think Detroit's arrow is pointing up. I think they're on the improve with Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn working well together together there. So I think it's a really hard division. It will not surprise me if multiple playoff teams come from the NFC North, and I definitely expect the Vikings to be in it to win it as we get into December with a really fun, tough 5-game schedule for the Vikings in December, which concludes with consecutive home division games for the Vikings, which I think is a big deal.
You have a new podcast. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, we do. We had the Wobcast for a long time. Now we're changing that to the Minnesota Vikings podcast. It's going to be improved. There's going to be more production to it. We're going to spend more time on it. It's going to be a better quality product, and we're excited about it. Thank you for asking about it. We launched it last week. Kevin Stefanski was our first guest, so that was pretty cool. We have a guest lined up that I think folks are going to like for this week, and we're really excited about that project and a bunch of other new stuff coming from the Vikings Entertainment Network this season that we're excited about. So, when the Wilf family built this facility, they also took care of us. They gave us cool studios, they gave us great technology, so now the pressure's on us to produce some good stuff.
Awesome. Where can people find that podcast?
They can find it at Vikings.com. They can find it on iTunes. Anywhere you can find podcasts, that you find all your other podcasts, you can go and find it there. The podcast app on your iPhone. So the Vikings app under the audio section. So those are places you can go and find it. And of course, you can always find our stuff on all of our social media platforms as well.
Awesome. We're hanging at the Vikings training camp with Mike Wobschall of the Vikings Entertainment Network.
Definitely a site that you need to use. If you're a Vikings fan, Vikings.com, they have videos, they have clips, and they have, all the news and notes that you need to stay informed. If you want to stay informed with this Vikings team, go to Vikings.com.
Yeah, player interviews, like you said, videos, breakdowns of everything, breaking news. It's the resource to use.
Absolutely. And you heard Mike Wobschall's prediction there. He's expecting this team to do well. So we'll get to our predictions a little bit later on in the program. Also still to come, Adam Thielen, and we'll talk to Andrew Kramer, Vikings reporter for the Star Tribune, right after this. You're watching coverage of the Vikings Training Camp 2019 right here on TV3.
This training camp special is brought to you by Harvest Homes, Stenerson Lumber, Sanford Health Detroit Lakes, Team Industries of Audubon, Foltz Buildings, Sype Drug, Farmers State Bank of Underwood, Dalton, and Rothsay, and Leighton Broadcasting.
At Stenerson Lumber, we're with you through the whole project, framing to finish. Stenerson Lumber offers free design service, and our educated, knowledgeable staff gives you one-on-one assistance. Whether you're a skilled contractor or a do-it-yourself novice, you'll find just what you need at Stenerson Lumber. And at Stenerson Lumber, we have free delivery service too. Stenerson Lumber in Detroit Lakes, Fergus Falls, and Moorhead. Business on the level since 1889.
Ladies, save the date! The Lakes Area Women's Expo, presented by Essentia Health, returns to the Kent Freeman Arena on September 12th from 4 to 8 with a VIP hour from 4 to 5. There's amazing vendors to shop and browse, a fashion show, there's sampling, door prizes, goodie bags, live music, even motivational speakers. Oh, and we're just getting started. There is so much more. If you want to be a vendor at this amazing event, call Amy at Leighton Broadcasting at 847-5624. The Lakes Area Women's Expo, September 12th at the Kent Freeman Arena. Brought to you by UCare, Old School Boutique, and Leighton Broadcasting.
Have you been searching for the perfect home? Hi, this is Jenny with Harvest Homes, and I am here to tell you that our large selection of Schultz modular and manufactured homes have the variety of floor plans, options, and price points that you want. We are making our home buyers' experience and budget our top priority because honestly, it's what you deserve. So come in today and pick out your perfect home right here at Harvest Homes.
When your money matters, call Harvest Homes.
I-94 and 210 West, Fergus Falls.
Welcome back. You're watching TV3 coverage of Vikings Training Camp 2019. We're broadcasting from Eagan, the Twin Cities Orthopedic Center. Charlie and Zeke. And Zeke, position battles are always something that we're focused on here at training camp. And one of the positions that, I don't think is completely solidified at this point is linebacker, with Kentrell Brothers and Ben Gideon really battling for that linebacking spot.
Yeah, either way, you're getting a very good special teams player, depending on if it's Brothers or Gideon starting. Gideon got the majority of the starts last year, but never count out Brothers to sneak in there and get those starts from Ben Gideon.
Right, and you look at the other linebackers, you got Eric Kendricks, and you have Anthony Barr, who elected to come back after, having everything all but signed in New York in New York at the Jets, he elected to come back here to Minnesota.
Yeah, they got something very special going on here with the defense. This is the only defense he's played for. He's playing for one of the best defensive coaches in the NFL. He's playing alongside his college teammate at UCLA and Eric Kendrick. So it's a very special place for Anthony Barr because it's just the familiarity aspect of it, but also unfinished business here in Minnesota.
So maybe the most noteworthy thing about Vikings Training Camp 2019, Zeke, is who we're bringing back rather than who we brought in. I think that might be the most interesting aspect. Is it's not like we have a bunch of new players. We have guys that are returning, and so it's more about who's coming back than who we lost.
Yeah, and the Vikings are trying to prevent their guys from leaving, dealing out a ton of extensions over the past 2 off seasons, locking up Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs and Anthony Barr and Danielle Hunter and Xavier Rhodes and Harrison Smith, the core guys on this defense, and they're staying here for a long time. So you have your core group, but now with cap space at a premium, it's kind of finding the right pieces to mix around those guys. Kirk Cousins, another guy who's going to need a lot of money the next 2 seasons.
Right, and so the players pretty much the same as last year. There's new draft picks and there's a few new faces, but the players are pretty much what we saw last year. Now the changes that we've seen, we have a new offensive coordinator. We have Kevin Stefanski. We also have an offensive advisor in Gary Kubiak, and we brought in a new special teams coordinator in Marwan Malouf from Miami. Had a chance to talk with Andrew Kramer, Vikings reporter for the Star-Tribune, and talked about these new additions to this Vikings team on the coaching side of it. Thanks so much, Andrew, for joining us again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So, disappointing season last year for the Vikings. There's no doubt about it. But the way things have went with Mike Zimmer as a head coach, it seems like makes the playoffs, doesn't make the playoffs. Last 6 years, it's been on and off again. So this year, we should make the playoffs, right?
Yeah, it's an odd-numbered year, right? That means it's going to be a good year for the Vikings. No, I think that consistency, Charlie, is exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for just getting that postseason win and then getting a second one potentially in back-to-back years. Just trying to string that together because too often these for whether it's offense, defense, special teams, something has always gone wrong. So Mike Zimmer knows that. His contract is up in 2020, so he very much knows this is a year he needs to win to try and get that contract extension and stay with the Vikings.
Maybe not completely on the hot seat, but he's getting close to the hot seat.
Yeah, him and general manager Rick Spielman. This is a year where their contracts are basically tied to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is also up after 2020. All 3 of them are playing for long-term security here in Minnesota. They have 1 playoff win since 2009. This entire franchise, Mike Zimmer just has the 1 playoff win to his name as a head coach. They need to not only make the playoffs, they need to win in the playoffs, and these Vikings know that to keep their jobs alive.
Ownership, management, they went out, they tried to help Mike Zimmer this offseason. They brought in Gary Kubiak. They brought in a new special teams coordinator as well. So let's talk a little bit about the addition of Gary Kubiak and also the new special teams coordinator.
Yeah, they brought Gary Kubiak in. Really, Kevin Stefanski, the guy who took over as interim coordinator last year for the last 3 games, they brought Gary in because they knew they needed some kind of veteran leadership over that offense. And Kevin was smart enough. Look, Kevin's been here 14 years, but he's still on the youthful side of 40. So he knows he needs somebody like Gary to come in with a Super Bowl ring. He's done it before as a head coach, as an offensive coordinator, to really install the systems that they want on offense, and one, frankly, that Mike Zimmer wants. They want to be under center. They want to run the ball. They want to throw off of play action. They don't want to just rely on these 2 great receivers that they have, and that's what Gary Kubiak is trying to install. That's why they draft Garrett Bradbury, the center, with the 1st round. Not a sexy pick, but they did it because they know they need to move the line of scrimmage, move the ball forward. That's why they draft Irv Smith in the 2nd round, because they want to be a heavier personnel offense. They want multiple tight ends with Kyle Rudolph to help facilitate that play action and that run game, Charlie, and that comes from Gary Kubiak.
Marwan Malouf is the new special teams coordinator, came from Miami, I believe. Yep. The Vikings were 13th in special teams last year. So what is Marwan Malouf looking to do this year for this team? And also, Marcus Sherrills is gone. He went to New Orleans. So maybe talk a little bit about the special teams here.
Yeah, really it all comes down to kicker Dan Bailey. They decide to stay status quo with the kicker. Look, Dan Bailey is one of the all-time most accurate field goal kickers in the NFL, but he has not been in the last 2 seasons. That includes missing 7 kicks last year, one of them being blocked. But they think Dan Bailey's still the right kicker for this team. They just thought a new special teams coordinator, a kicking consultant, and Nate Kading, remember the former Chargers kicker, he's been out here helping Dan Bailey with some of the field goal operation stuff. And honestly, they're trying Adam Thielen as a holder at times for these field goals because the punter, Matt Weil, has been so-so at that in the past. So they're trying everything to get this kicking operation down pat because Vikings fans know how poorly that has treated them in the past. So Marwan Malouf, as a special teams coordinator, has to figure that out.
The holder, he has a tough job, you know. I mean, he's really got to make the snapper right, and then he's also got to put a good ball down for me to kick. So the main thing is whoever's out there is obviously going to be giving it 110%. So look, you know, I mean, we're all working at that. It's 4 days into camp, you know. I wouldn't put too much stock into anything really at this point. It's just more of see who's comfortable back there and see what we have. So obviously those decisions are way above my pay grade. I'm just here to try to put them through the uprights. So you know, we'll figure it out and get a good operation going. Even though there's not somebody physically here that I'm competing against, that's a spot that I want to keep for sure. And so yeah, you're always competing against yourself. Don't think for 1 minute I'm taking any shortcuts or you know, patting myself on the back like I've accomplished anything, because I certainly haven't. And that's the way I try to approach it every day, and just go out there and push yourself and aim for perfection. Understand that that's going to be a tough goal, but you know, it's a good one to have, and at the end of the day, I hope it's enough to keep one of those spots.
And then at punt returner, as you said, with Marcus Sherrill's gone, they're going to look to a young kid in Chad Beebe to try and fill that role, an undrafted wide receiver just a couple years ago. And so he's got some big shoes to fill with Marcus gone.
I've done a lot of punt returns in my past. Did in high school and college, and then obviously, you know, continue to work on it. So if they call my number, I'll be ready.
Adam Thielen, one of the reasons why we're down here to cover the Vikings. Man, another solid year, setting records last year. What's your impressions this training camp with Adam Thielen?
It's just amazing to watch because he's not that kind of prototypical 6'3", 220-pound, you know, Julio Jones type who's just going to outmuscle you. He's just so good at what he does, and it's just so fun to watch because he's such a technician. He's somebody who can really get in and out of routes with such smoothness and ease. And it's funny watching whether it's Xavier Rhodes, a veteran corner, or a young rookie that they just bring in like Chris Boyd. Both of them can get caught trying to cover him and fail because of how good he is. And so watching Adam Thielen, I think just the sky's the limit. He could put up another 12, 13, 1,400-yard season, even if this is going to be a run-first offense, because that's just how good he is.
Talking about that run-first offense, Delvin Cook looks like he's back. Looks like he's healthy too.
Yeah, he does. And the thing is, he looked that way last year, and so he's just got to stay that way. And that's why they drafted Alexander Mattison in the 3rd round, just because, look, they need that depth at running back. He hasn't been durable, Dalvin Cook, but when he's healthy, he's one of the most electric, elusive running backs in the NFL. And if they can have him healthy for a full 16 games, knock on wood, that could be really what pushes them over the edge.
We'll see. And any predictions? You know, Chicago, they still have that defense. They're still going to be good. Trubisky's going to have another year under his belt. You know, look out for Detroit too. Another year with Matt Patricia, and Green Bay. Who knows what we're going to see from Green Bay? How do you see the NFC North shaking out this year?
Yeah, and oh, by the way, Aaron Rodgers is still in the division. Right. Yeah, so it's one of the toughest divisions in football. I really believe that. And the Vikings are going to be really hard-pressed. We're going to find out early because they have early September trips to Chicago and to Green Bay. And we're going to find out quick where they stack up in this division. They've got the talent to do it. It's just a matter of can they put it together. So I think this Vikings team, even if they can't win the division, they'll be right in that position for a wild card spot.
All right, Andrew, appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Charlie. And you can check out our work at StarTribune.com, and please pick up a newspaper.
Yeah, absolutely. And follow you on Twitter as well.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Andrew_Kramer. That's KRAMMER. And you can follow us at Strib Sports.
All right, Andrew Kramer, Vikings reporter with the Star Tribune. You meet so many characters. Some of these guys really have personalities, and one of those guys that, you know, because I was able to interview him earlier this year and also just talking with him down here in Eagan, one of the biggest characters on this team is Stephen Weatherly, Zeke.
Yeah, Stephen Weatherly up in Mahnomen Waban for the Minnesota Vikings Community of the Year Festival up there last, was it April?
Yeah, Town Takeover.
The Town Takeover in April. Man, it seems like Man, the town takeover. And Stephen Weatherly was up there with the Shrut Hill, and Stephen Weatherly had an interview with us up there, and then we followed up with Stephen Weatherly down here. He wore a state champion Monoman Waban Thunderbirds t-shirt to one of the first days of practice. He talks about it.
Hey y'all, Steven. Y'all know me. I did rock the shirt first day back, had to. It was new. Had to show off that I got to go hang out with some state champs, something we're trying to do, be champions as well. Day one with the pads and camps. It's a long one. Hopefully y'all be able to make it out to a game at some point. See us rock it. Shaw says what's up too. I want to wish the Thunderbirds the best of luck with their upcoming season.
Yeah, Stephen Weatherly, I think, really is poised to have a breakout year, kind of like Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter almost led the NFL in sacks last year,
right.
And you got a guy like Stephen Weatherly who, could be the next, best defensive end on this team. And we've had a lot of good defensive ends through the years.
You throw on that defensive line with Shamar Steffen and Linval Joseph, a combination of Danielle Hunter, and you have Everson Griffith on this team yet as well. This defensive line is going to strike fear into the hearts of the quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and Matt Stafford and Mitch Trubisky in this division.
Most scary part of this roster, for me anyways, is quarterback. And I don't mean Kirk Cousins. I mean the guys behind Kirk Cousins. I'm not sold yet, Zeke. Try to sell me on these quarterbacks that we have behind Kirk Cousins on the depth chart. Because if Kirk gets hurt, man, we're going to be in some trouble, I think.
We've seen success, quarterbacks going down, and then really good backups. Look at a couple years ago with Case Keenum. You look back at 1998, Brad Johnson breaks his leg week 2, and in comes Randall Cunningham, goes 13-1 or something with these Minnesota Vikings. Now this year you've got two guys. You've got Kyle Sloter, who's kind of bounced around up and down between the practice squad with the Denver Broncos and the Minnesota Vikings, and you've got a guy who comes from the Sean McVay tree, which is a highly coveted tree to come from with the Los Angeles Rams, was the backup quarterback last year for the NFC champion Los Angeles Rams, lost the Super Bowl backing up Jared Goff. So I think Mannion only has maybe 50 or so passes in his career in the NFL. But if Cousins goes down, likely it's going to be Mannion or Kyle Sloter.
Right, and they also guaranteed money to Jake Browning to make this team.
Yeah,
so,
an undrafted rookie from Washington.
Right, so backup quarterback I think is going to be... it's going to be scary if they ever have to come into the game. Hopefully they don't have to. Hopefully Kirk can stay healthy all 16 games. Coming up next here on TV3, we're going to have our conversation with Adam Thielen, Detroit Lake's own Adam Thielen, coming up right after this here on TV3.
Thank you to our sponsors who have made this possible. Harvest Homes, Stenerson Lumber, Sanford Health Detroit Lakes, Team Industries of Audubon, Foltz Buildings, Sipe Drug, Farmers State Bank of Underwood, Dalton, and Rothsay, and Leighton Broadcasting.
First of all, he's a great guy, and I'm blessed to be able to come to know him, and I've learned a lot from him, not only on the field but off the field too. Just how he carries himself, how he's professional, and obviously he's a really good receiver, and so I've been able to learn a lot from him that way too. Whether it's watching him on film, asking him questions, all those things.
You're watching coverage of Vikings Training Camp 2019 right here on TV3. We're broadcasting from the Twin Cities Orthopedic Center in Eagan. Zeke, one of our traditions here on TV3, every year we come down here to Vikings Training Camp, we always talk to the hometown guy, Adam Thielen.
Yeah, and Adam, one of the more requested guys at training camp this year. This year we had to wait in line to interview Adam. Everybody wants a piece of number 19, and rightfully so. Two-time Pro Bowler, one of the best receivers in the history of the Vikings, and it keeps going up and up. And the ceiling's still there's no end to this guy. He always seems to impress, whether it's a fantastic catch. I mean, you think of the catch against the Packers in that tie last year where he was falling into the end zone and didn't put his hands up to the last second so that the defensive back didn't know where the ball was, and just things like that. You never know what to expect next from Adam Thielen.
Absolutely. And, the traditional media questions, they're all swell and dandy, but we wanted to ask you what your questions were for Adam Thielen, and here are some of the questions that we had for Adam, courtesy of you. Vikings Training Camp 2019. We're talking with Vikings wide receiver, Detroit Lakes native Adam Thielen. And Adam, a couple days of practice so far. How you feeling?
Good. You know, it's obviously the first couple of days, so just trying to get back in the swing of things and try to learn this playbook as well. But it's a good start, and as always, there's going to be some ups and downs, but just trying to figure it out, keep getting better, and keep coming to work.
What do you like about this playbook?
I think it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's exciting. I think you can make a lot of things look the same. There's not a whole lot of difference between the look of our run game and pass game, which I think is awesome as a receiver to have things look the same.
Yeah. And you feeling healthy so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a good start. Obviously, every day is the goal is to get back to 100% as possible. So just trying to make sure I take care of my body and continue to do that moving forward.
And again, we asked our listeners some fan questions. So here we go. You ready for this?
Let's do it.
All right. So we have Anne Marie. She wants to know who your favorite band is.
Who my favorite band is? Oh, geez. Probably Jack Johnson.
Jack Johnson. Mm-hmm. All right. Mason at Detroit Lakes wants to know, what do you eat before a game?
I actually have the same thing for every game. I have a protein shake, and I have 3 eggs scrambled.
All right, 3 eggs. All right. Clayton and Owen want to know what your favorite home-cooked meal is that Mom makes.
Favorite home-cooked meal? I mean, back in the day, it was probably tater tot hot dish or spaghetti. Now it's probably my wife makes a chicken. I'm not exactly sure what she puts in it, but it's like kind of like a shredded chicken that's really good.
All right. And what do you see for 2019, 2020? What's the goal this year?
I mean, I think it's honestly right now we're just trying to keep coming out here and work hard. Obviously, put a new system in that really fits this offense. So we're doing a good job just coming out here and working hard and kind of letting that stuff play itself out. We're not going to put any expectations for ourselves. We're just going to come out here and bust our tail and know that we're going to be the best offense, best team we can possibly be come Sunday.
We've seen the billboards around Detroit Lakes, the Thielen Foundation. And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know, it's almost a year. You know, it's almost been going for a year now, which is exciting. It's been a great start, and we're just trying to help out as many youth as possible reach their full potential. So whether that be helping them, give them resources, opportunities that maybe my wife and I had growing up that has kind of helped us become who we are. So just trying to give back and to the communities that have done so much for us. So trying to impact as many kids in that area as possible.
Appreciate the time, Adam. Have a great season.
All right, thank you.
All right, so another tradition of our coverage of TV3 is our predictions.
This is my least favorite part because we're always very wrong.
Yeah, I don't think we were right last year. I think, what did we say? I think you said 12-4. I was 11-5.
8-7-1. So we were pretty off.
It's so tough when you come down here and you listen to the coaches, you listen to the players, and what the mantra is going to be like this year, and what the strategy is. You just start to buy in. You're like, okay, yeah, we're going to do it this year. I'm starting to believe, just being around this team of guys, you start believing, and so that's maybe where our predictions get skewed a little bit. But honestly, you look at this Vikings team, there's no reason why they shouldn't be at least in contention for the NFC North, and why they shouldn't get into the playoffs as well.
Yeah, a lot of people think that the Chicago Bears are going to digress a little bit this year. You can't count on the Green Bay Packers. Made a lot of offseason moves on the defensive side of the ball, and they still have number 12, Aaron Rodgers, and that's right. You still have to factor in Aaron Rodgers. The Lions possibly on the up and up as well. They should finish in the basement, but they made some positive strides forward as well. But the Packers scare me just because of the defensive side of the ball, but the Vikings offense has the potential to be so potent that shouldn't be an issue.
You look at the NFC too, and you got to take that into your prediction as well. The entire NFC, it's pretty good this year. Yes. When you look at the NFC West, with what San Francisco has done, with Los Angeles making it to the Super Bowl last year, you have the Seattle Seahawks. They're always in contention. We talked about the NFC North, and then you have the NFC East, who have made moves as well here in the offseason. So it's a very tough NFC year this year, and if you're going to be a wild card team, I really think you have to go 10-6. I think the Vikings will finish 10-6, and I think they'll make it in as a wild card team. Okay, and I think the Chicago Bears, I think once again that defense will be enough to win them another division.
Yeah, another thing you have to look into is that the Vikings play the AFC West this year. You've got the Los Angeles Chargers, you've got Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, you've got Joe Flacco and the Denver Broncos, and then you've got the Oakland Raiders as well. So that's another really tough schedule in addition to this tough NFC North schedule as well. I have the Vikings at 9-7. I don't think they get into the playoffs at 9-7, but they'll be in it to the last week of the season.
What most excites you this year, Zeke, when you look at this team?
I'm most excited for year 2 of Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, and Stephon Diggs. You add another weapon in Irv Smith Jr., a healthy Dalvin Cook, but it all hinges on the health of that offensive line and the strength of the offensive line and the depth. And can those guys stay healthy? Can those guys keep Kirk Cousins upright? Because if number 8 is in the dirt, things are going to go poorly all season long.
Right. Couple things. 2 things. I'm gonna do 2 things.
All right.
Because I can. Because I think what really is important for this Vikings team this year is special teams. Dan Bailey, can he bounce back? He was 21 of 28 field goals last year. What's it going to be like with Dan Bailey this year? He's a big part of this team. Kickers, they will win you games for NFL teams. Another part that I'm looking at, the most exciting part as well, is Dalvin Cook. I really think we just scratched the surface of the potential with Dalvin Cook. Unfortunately, he's had injuries that have plagued him so far in his career, but I think Dalvin Cook stays healthy, our offensive line improves, and I think it's going to be a monstrous year for Dalvin Cook. So special teams and Dalvin Cook, those are my most exciting things for the Vikings 2019.
Yeah, I'll buy in.
All right. You've been watching coverage of Vikings Training Camp 2019 right here on TV3. Big shout out to our sponsors and a big shout out to you for watching coverage of Vikings Training Camp 2019 right here on TV3.
Vikings Training Camp on TV3 has been brought to you by Harvest Homes, Stenerson Lumber, Sanford Health Detroit Lakes, Team Industries of Audubon, Foltz Buildings, Sype Drug, Farmers State Bank of Underwood, Dalton, and Rothsay, and Leighton Broadcasting.